So today I'm standing in the gardens of the Belvedere Palace complex, and the Belvedere actually consists of two palaces, the upper and the lower Belvedere, and we are looking here at the lower Belvedere, which was actually the more modest of the two palaces. I'll show you the upper one in a second. Both of these palaces were built as summer palaces for Prince Eugene of Savoy, who was one of the important defenders of Vienna during the Second Turkish Siege in 1683. And he went on to have a very glorious military career and to serve 3 Habsburg emperors, so of course he was a very important person. So he built these beautiful palaces. He only lived in the one down here, the more modest of the two, and then he had a whole separate palace that was just for representative purposes, to host parties and to meet foreign dignitaries and to consult with the emperor and that sort of thing. As you can see, there's a beautiful view of the city of Vienna, and actually the word Belvedere is Italian for beautiful view. And so you can actually see the tower of St. Stephen's Cathedral in the background here. But believe it or not, when this was first built, this was a very rural area. So the city's really grown out to meet it, but it was really a summer palace. And he also had a winter palace about 20 minutes away in the inner city. So this was really only used in the summertime. So what happened was that Prince Eugene of Savoy was a great art collector, and he loved to build beautiful big buildings, but he had no heirs, he had no children. And so when he died, all of this went to his cousin, Anna Victoria. And Anna Victoria moved in, but she made it clear that she really didn't want to stay and that she was really looking to sell it. And so she actually sold it to Empress Maria Theresa. And Empress Maria Theresa and her son, Joseph II, both of them were really benevolent despots, very famously so, and they decided that they wanted to open up the gardens and the palace to the public, and so that everybody could enjoy them. And they also decided to house the royal art collection in the Belvedere palaces so that people could go in and see all the treasures that the Habsburgs had, so that they weren't just kept for the royal family. And so they opened up all of this. And then what happened was, in the 19th century, they built the museums, the Art History Museum on the Ringstrasse, and so that was then the new home for the Royal Art Collection. So they weren't really sure what they were going to do with this complex, and in the end they decided to do modern art in the lower Belvedere. And then here, this palace here, which is the upper Belvedere, the much more ostentatious of the two palaces, that one became the residence for Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was at that time the heir to the throne of the Austrian monarchy. And Archduke Franz Ferdinand, of course, he's famously known for going to Sarajevo with his wife in 1914, and he was assassinated there, and that's what triggered off the First World War. So today what we have here is, in the Upper Belvedere, is a standing exhibition of a lot of really famous Austrian artists, most famously Klimt and Schiele. The Kiss is actually housed in this building, and you can see that its exterior is much more ostentatious than the lower Belvedere, and if you look carefully, you might notice that the roof line is kind of unusual, and it's got a lot of rounded domes as well as a lot of sort of like little spikes, and those are intended to look a little bit like the tents that were outside the Vienna city walls during the Turkish siege, because all of the stuff in the Upper Belvedere, a lot of the art and decoration was intended to remind everybody of Prince Eugene's role in defending Vienna from the Turks. So this palace was really badly damaged during World War II. In part because it's very close to the South train station, and of course train stations were very important military targets, and a lot of times it was very difficult to tell just from looking at the roof what was a train station and what was a palace. In fact, the opera was famously bombed out because the Allies thought it was a train station. So this palace up here sustained a lot of damage during World War II, and then it was rebuilt. And then, very famously, after the war, this was the place where the state treaty was signed that released Austria from the four-power occupation. So what happened was, in 1955, there was this enormous crowd assembled in the Belvedere Gardens, thousands and thousands of people all through here. And then the 4 foreign ministers came out onto the balcony of the Upper Belvedere, so that balcony right there in the middle, and they came out and Austrian Foreign Minister Leopold Fiegel, he held up the state treaty and he showed it to everybody, and the whole place just erupted into cheers, because essentially the state treaty was the equivalent for the Austrians of what our Declaration of Independence is to us. It sort of says we are a sovereign nation, and it was kind of like a new start for them after the war.